Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Hope everyone's having a happy Sabbath and enjoying the evening in this beautiful sunshine where you are.
Hi, everyone.
My name is Philip Janice, and this is my wife Trisha Janice, and we're from the Marriage Ministry of Northeast Seventh Day Adventist Church. So we welcome everyone for coming on and hopping on. So we have an exciting thing today because we're having a we're having money, marriage, and COVID-19 presentation with Elena Anthony. So Trisha's going to tell you a little about Elena.
Okay, y'all. Elena is our very own. Everyone should know who Elena is, and if you don't, you're going to enjoy talking and listening to her. Elena Anthony is a certified financial educator and money coach at Financial Demics, a YouTube channel and a blog where she teaches women about the foundation of personal finances. She's also the co-host of Single Moms on the Money podcast. She has paid off over $65,000 in debt so far and helps her client become confident about money so that they can use it as a tool to reach their goals. She has many streams for you to contact her, which will be websites through YouTube and Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. So at the end of our presentation, we'll definitely put all those links up for you guys to access her if you need any counseling after the fact or before. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and jump right into our conversation. If you guys have questions, feel free to type it into the chat and we'll definitely be responding to your question. We would like for it to be an interactive conversation. So by all means, jump on with your questions and get in.
Hi, everyone. How are you? All right, so first I want to thank Northeast Seventh Day Adventist Church, Pastor Willis, and Trisha and Phil Janice, the leaders of Family Life Ministries, for inviting me. I really appreciate it. So the first thing I like to do is just really give you background about me, because a lot of times, especially in the personal finance space, like there are the people who actually have lived through things, and then there are people who are actually educated through it, and I'm a little bit of both. So Trish read my bio, but then also by day, I am an accountant. So I am in numbers all the time. I used to be in investment. So I kind of have a really big background when it comes to numbers. So just to kind of tell my story, I was working in investments and I used to deal with a lot of clients who really didn't know what they were doing with their investments. And I especially worked with a lot of women when their husbands passed away. They had no idea what to do with their money, period. And so I had started getting more into like managing my money. I thought I was good at it. I mean, I was working in corporate America. I was making a really decent income. And so I thought I was doing well with my finances. I was paying off my debt, but still had debt. And so I thought like, I'm in a good place. Like I know better than, these women who I'm speaking to, but that did make me want to help them. So as time went on, I ended up getting a MBA in accounting. And then I had this opportunity that came up. At the time, they were offering people to go get their PhD in accounting for free because nobody wants to teach accounting on the college level, which I really don't understand why. But I mean, you can get paid more in corporate. So maybe that's, that's what it is. So they were offering it for free. My dean that I worked under, because I was teaching part-time because I always wanted to teach. And so my dean mentioned it to me and a few other younger women who were teaching, saying that would be a really great opportunity for us. And at first I blew it off, but then I started really looking into it. And as time went on, I actually connected with a school and everything, was talking to the person. And I started making moves towards like, okay, I'm going to move. I'm going to go get my PhD. And for those that know me, y'all know that I do have a son. I was a single mother at the time. And so I was trying to make it work where I would be able to take him with me. But what I realized is that stipend of $24,000 a year was not going to be enough. And not because, I live this lavish lifestyle, which I will admit I am a spender. So I'll let you know there's two types of people, spenders and savers. But basically, I just really had too much debt. And it wasn't even just the student loans. I had debt from paying for things from my house. I had a home, which I wanted to rent. But at the time, we know we had a recession in 2007 through 2009. My house didn't have the value to truly sell. And so I had to prepare for that and just, credit card repairs, things like that. So I didn't have enough money to go to school for free. Let's just say that. And when I realized that, it was really embarrassing to me, but I'm a very determined type of person. And so I decided, like, this is not going to happen again. Like, how can you not go to school for free? Like, I paid for all of my degrees. I only have 2. I'm saying it like I have a lot, but I paid for my degrees. And so the fact that I had an opportunity to do it for free and get a little bit of a check while doing it, and I couldn't afford to do it, was an issue for me. And so when I did that, I just decided that, I am going to start paying off my debt. And so at that time, I decided to really just sit down, look at everything that I was paying for. And I had a budget at that time, but I will say my budget was more so what I consider a spending plan. So I would get paid, I would sit down, look at everything that I had to pay for, and then whatever was left was free for me to use. And I was saving money at the time, but not really with intention. I was just saving money, and then whatever I needed it for, I just used it, right? And so I realized when I actually went through my numbers, I actually had a good about $300 a month that I had to play with. And I didn't know where it was really going. But when I kind of look back now, I know it was going to, like, hanging out with my friends, brunch, shopping, things like that. And so I decided that I was going to create a plan to help pay off my debt. I started using my whole check. Oh, and I should mention that extra $300 was just my full-time job. That wasn't even the check that I was getting from teaching. So I was really just spending through money at that point. Even though I thought I was managing it well, it wasn't well enough for what I wanted for my life. So I started using my whole teaching check to go towards paying off debt. I started picking up side hustles. So I was doing a lot of little side hustles to put towards my debt. And then I also was using that money that I had, extra money in my check, to go towards my debt. But the first thing that I actually did was save some more money, because I had actually had a savings before all of this happened. But with repairs to my home, I just didn't realize how much homeowners repairs could cost. And so I ended up going through my savings just off of home repairs. So I saved some more money, just about $1,000. And then I just started paying off my debt from there. I ended up paying off $48,000 before I got to the point where I was getting married. And then I decided I was not going to put my wedding on a credit card or anything like that. So we cash flowed our wedding. So we had a 5-figure wedding, cash. And I made sure that money was going to the side for that. And then once I moved up to New York, because that's where I live now, I live in Queens, New York, I decided that I was going to continue paying off debt, but I did it at a slower pace. And the reason why I did it at a slower pace, because I felt like it was important to put my kid into private school. And so I paid off debt just, a little bit slower. So now I'm at 68,000 paid off. I have some more to go. I have student loans left. And so hopefully, I am striving on 2 years. They will be gone at this point. But I just want to let you know that I actually live this life. This is something I actually do. I just don't talk about it. But I also want you to know, if you do have debt and you're on the journey, it's your story, right? So you can adjust as needed. I feel like a lot of times people hear those stories of people who pay off $100,000 of debt in 18 months. And I seriously thought I was going to be one of those people. But I wasn't, because life just didn't work out that way for me. And that's okay, because I wanted there was more important things for me. For me, it was more important to put money into my greatest investment, which was my kid. And so just know that you can do stuff. You just have to stay motivated and, you know, just keep striving to get to actually where you want to be, not where someone else wants to be, or one of your friends wants you to be. So that's just my story. So I know we're doing a panel here. So are we doing questions first, or how are we doing this?
Go ahead, Pastor. You're on mute. There you go.
Yeah, we're gonna do questions first. Thank you. That was a great illustration.
Yes, thank you for sharing.
Yeah. I think it's important to realize, and maybe you didn't get to do the PhD, but sometimes people with PhDs don't have the practical knowledge that you have, which allows you to do what you're able to do today. So my first question, just listening to your experience, you said you kind of started to realize that my budget, you know, I thought I was doing with my money, but I realized I was spending money on shopping, doing these things here and there. So how do you begin to evaluate your budget and determine your non-essentials?
Okay, so when it comes to a budget, and I'll just kind of explain how to do the budget and then go there. So when it comes to your budget, I say that's always important to look at the past and then go forward. And so I know right now it's kind of hard because I feel like everybody's spending is a little bit different due to COVID, right? But look at how you're actually spending your money and start writing it down. So I like to start with the 4 walls first. So, okay, what are you paying on rent and mortgage? What are you paying for your utilities? What are you paying for food? And then basic clothing. I always like to include that because people always forget basic clothing. And I really mean basic, like not the extra great stuff, just what you actually need, which truthfully, you shouldn't be spending a lot on basic clothing, hopefully, right? Unless you have small kids who are growing pretty fast. And then I start to go into like, what debts are you paying for? So start adding in your debts. So such as like, if you're paying for any credit cards, student loans, personal loans, if you have car loans, start adding those things up. And then also look at what else are you paying for? The rest really should be lifestyle expenses. And so what are your lifestyle? What do you like to do that you're paying for? And that's why I say to go back and look at your bank account. If you are a cash spender, you may want to track your spending for a month or so to really see how you spend. But for me, I'm a card person, so I can easily go and see what are the little things that I pay for. So one thing I learned really easily is that I needed a hairline in my budget because I was paying for hair products all the time. I could always see that I was going to the hair store. After a while, I learned that I needed a kid fund because my kid stays in my pockets and it has not changed, even though he's in college. There's always was something that he was coming to me for. So I decided to start putting money away for that. Another thing people seem to miss is like lunch. Like if you're, well, right now, like I said, most people are, working from home, but if you pay for lunch at work, like you like to eat out at work, you need to add that in there too, because that is something that you're paying for and you'll easily forget about. And truthfully, like if you think about it, if you're spending $10 a day on lunch, that's $200 for the month, easily. And so start going through and see like, how am I spending my money, right? Then once you do that, then start to determine what's something I really need and what are the things that I actually want to have. And so what your wants are things that, if you like to go to, I'm trying to think. Your wants are like restaurants. Your wants are like if you're going to the spa. Of course, if you're shopping. I hate to say this, if you have a home phone, your cell phone's a want. And I know it sounds weird because now I feel like cell phones are so required in life, but your cell phone is a want. If you have cable, it's a want. And even the streaming services are a want. Now, I will say though, I don't believe in just cutting out things, especially if you have kids. You have to figure out, what that balance is, because there's a thing. I believe in sanity. So you need to create that balance. So maybe it's like, okay, maybe I have cable, but maybe I have a reduced package, or maybe we don't have cable, but we have a couple of streaming services to offset that, and we're paying a little bit less. I will say also that like internet is an actual need, because in these days, like you are always going to need internet, especially look at where we are now. I know in CMS, at least, that they are virtual learning. And so I think that's something that everyone should have. I know it's not as affordable for everyone, but I think that's something that's a need. But I would go through, and everybody's needs and wants are different. So like, Pastor, your needs, you and your wife's needs or your wants are going to be different from brother and sister Janice. You know, so you have to just sit down together and decide, okay, what's important. And you have to realize you have to compromise. So we have cable.
I think it should be my way all the time.
No.
But anyway.
No. We have cable. I could care less. I mean, there's a couple of channels I watch, but I'll probably watch like 5 channels. My husband, I work hard for my money. I should be able to watch what I want to watch when I want to watch it. So we have cable. So that's something that I just have to, you know, we balance it together. Like, okay, we have cable, but maybe, you know, we're not eating out as much, or, you know, maybe I'm not going, you know, to, it's weird. I hate my examples. I feel like are not COVID examples, but maybe I'm not going to get a massage or things like that because I want to make sure that we're reaching our goals. So, you know, it's kind of like, how can you balance that? So that's kind of how you tell. Like my husband has a habit of a hobby. It's very expensive. He rides bikes, and he does trail and road. That money is completely separate from household money on purpose. You know what I mean? But that's how we make it work for us, so that he's still able to do what he loves. And when he can't necessarily do something, or he needs to repair something, I don't have to see it. Like he knows he gets that money together because that's a want for him. It's not a want for me. So
is that like in separate accounts, or like how do you I guess practically do that?
Okay, no, that's fine. That's actually a great question. So I believe in multiple bank accounts. I've been this way ever since I started my debt payoff journey, just because it was easier for me to be able to track my money. So we have an account just for bills. So like all our bills goes into that one account. Actually, we have 2 accounts for bills, but you know, just to keep it simple, one account just for bills. And then I have like a fund money account, and he has a fund money account. So fund money is money that you can do anything you want with, no questions asked. And you just have to make sure that balance works for you, right? So I tell people there's no set amount for fund money, right? So when I first started, I had like $400 worth of fund money every month. And then I realized that fund money is cutting into, I want to do this, and this is interfering. So I want to pay this off faster. So what I would do is I just cut it down. So I think right now I'm at about $100 of fund money every month. So that's $25 a week. But we're in the house. So it really, I call it Amazon money right now. So, you know, his fund money pays for his hobby. You know, he puts that money aside. He gets to spend it how he wants in his hobby. So I know a new seat came in this week, you know, or last week or something recently, you know, and so that's his money that he gets to do. So it's just, it makes it easier, and it reduces the fights about money because you have your own money to spend how you want
it. Okay. It's good. It's really great to hear that some of the things you've given us, because it's funny that's what Trisha and I have done. So I want to talk about the newlywed couples, because you know, newly couples 5 years under to me is newlyweds, because you're still learning each other. What advice would you give them about money and how to manage money? Because some nuggets for them.
I'm still a newlywed. I would say, first of all, you really have to talk it out first. So you should discuss how you want to manage your money. I think you have to be open that might not work out the way that you think it's going to work out. when you first, like, because when you talk about it, it sounds good, especially if you talk about it before you get married. You're like, oh yeah, okay, this is how we'll do things. And then when you get into real life, that's just not really working out the way that you plan for it to work out. So what I would say is, first of all, you should have money dates. Money dates are when you sit down and y'all go over the finances. So you should really talk about the finances together. I don't care for one person handling everything. I know it works for some people, but I still feel like the other person should know stuff. And that is just strictly from my experience with working with those widows who knew nothing. Like, they didn't know anything. So when their spouse suddenly died, they didn't have any idea of where anything was, what to pay for, how much it was, or anything. So I believe that, like, there should be some type of communication, even if there's maybe a head, like a person who runs point. There's the other person should know what's going on, or at least know where to access those documents and that information so that they're able to get into the accounts, know what's in the accounts and things like that. I also think that it's very important not to try to have these discussions during like football, basketball, watching a movie, any of that stuff. It's just not going to go well. I'll tell you from experience, like, it's not going to go well at all. Set a date, you know, and also make your money date fun if you can. Like, make sure that maybe you are doing it, like maybe you go out and actually do it, or right now it's COVID, right? Do it in the house, get your favorite foods, cook it up, you know, get your ice cream, whatever. Give the kids some little candy, popcorn, something in a movie, you know, put them over to the side and really sit down and discuss your finances. Also try to be, well, not try, be open about your finances. I think sometimes it's embarrassing, you know, especially if maybe one person has more debt than the other. But it's important to be open about it, because you never know. Maybe your spouse is maybe they want to help you, you know, maybe they want to help you pay that off faster, or maybe they're working on something and you all can kind of come to an agreement of how you want to handle like paying off debt or saving for things. And then also when it comes to couples, y'all have to understand what each other's goals are. Because if you really don't know your goals, like, your conversations are not going to go well. Because one person has an idea of like why they want to do things and how, and then the other person has their idea and they don't mesh, and they're not going to, because you're two different people. And I think we get the idea like, oh, once we get married, it's going to be the same thing, and it's not. And so you need to actually talk about your goals and then come up with a plan to actually reach each one of your goals, you know? So that's going to be personal, whether or not you want to focus fully on one person or focus fully on the other, or you can intertwine your goals. Like, maybe, okay, we'll work towards this piece, and then, okay, we're going to switch to my piece. But I would say make sure you understand that. And then when it comes to banking and putting your bank accounts together, I am a fan of being transparent about like the money. But I do know that it doesn't work well for everybody. I've encountered wives who, like, there's a, like, maybe she's a spender and he's not, or somebody's a spender and the other one's not. And so, you know, you need to figure out how to make that work for your family. And sometimes it's just allowing things that maybe are not your favorite, but giving a little bit of leeway for the whole like calm and completeness of the family. So, you know, maybe you don't want to spend money on, I'm going to use the bike example with my husband. This is not our issue, but maybe like he wants to, you know, put money towards his bike, right? Redoing his bikes. And if y'all don't know anything about these type of bikes, this is not the Walmart bike. These expensive bikes, you know, and you buy all the pieces, right? You build this bike, you know, maybe he wants to put money towards the bike. So to keep it calm and keep us, you know, cohesive and on the same page, maybe it's not that I'm saying you can't put money towards the bike. Maybe it's like, okay, can we put a little bit towards the bike and then put a little bit towards this? So you just have to be flexible with your spouse. And hopefully, because I am not the I'm not an expert on relationships, so hopefully it'll work out in your favor.
So one question someone put in the comment section, you kind of talk about, how we should spend our money, and there's kind of negotiation, your money, my money. What happens if there's only one spouse working?
So if there's only one spouse working, I am not a fan of like, I work and I control all the money.
Oh.
Yeah. I believe that it's still our money thing. And that's because our money affects the household. Your household doesn't run well if you're not accessing our money. And so I think that's a mindset thing that has to be worked out, because in my head, right, and I'm assuming, right, if one spouse is working and one is not, right, the spouse who's not working are probably running the household. And that means they're buying groceries, they're paying, if you have kids, they're paying for anything that kids need and all of that stuff. I think there has to be an understanding. And truthfully, that might be the person who is the money manager. I know in some cases it's not, like the husband would still be working, he's handling all the money. But I think that you still need to have that money date and still discuss things. I mean, it still could be a situation where the spouse who's not working is maybe spending more than they should. And so you have to actually have those conversations, but you're still a unit. So I'm not a fan of the whole, like, my money, your money. I think it gets messy after a while, and you don't want to create an atmosphere of resentment, because I've seen those atmospheres. I'm in a few like wives groups, and I see that when one person is not working and then the other person's like, oh, this is my money and this and that. And you have to think about it as the working spouse. What if the tables flip one day? You do not want your spouse to treat you that way. So try to come together on that and realize that you are a unit. You're one. So work together on it.
I used to always say, I remember when we did marriage counseling, right? They would always start off with no money, no honey, right? That was just straight the topic of the book that we read when it was, man, I can't even remember the book, but it was by Nancy Van Pelt. And that's how, he was trying to coach us through how to come together and sit down and actually have the real conversation of, okay, so what are we going to spend? What are we going to keep? And how are we going to work this together? So this is not just my money, your money, but how we're going to build together. And I find that, when you're going through these marriage counseling sessions, especially if you're trying to put God in the marriage and in home, when it comes to finances, these conversations are very uncomfortable for some people, and it's real. I mean, and to the point where you're like, man, if I know I make more and I'm looking at you sideways, I'm going to get real upset. So some people really do have to kind of step back and kind of pray and say, Lord, help me to kind of remove myself from the whole situation and really put you ahead of it so that I can work with my spouse to get it. So I totally get the part where you said, you really have to kind of sit down and make the time to invest and really, invest in the finances of the marriage.
Oh yeah. Because it definitely could be I'll tell you, I'll be transparent. Like, it was rough in the beginning for us. Mm-hmm. It was rough because I'm very, I told you I'm an accountant. I'm line by line. Like, I know what's going on. And my husband's more so like, okay, we have money or we don't have money. We have money, let's spend it. If we don't, we don't. And I'm like, no, that money has a name already. I have a use for that money. So, you really have to, and make sure you understand the person. And I would say the one key thing that I know, from just my relationship and just from my husband is in school for social work. He's getting a master's of social work. Everybody has a different background. And so it's really important to understand what your spouse's background is, because that has a lot to do with how they manage stuff. Because people can either go to one way where they kind of operate from scarcity or another way where they operate from abundance. And that really changes your thought process. So you have to, it's not going to make it better just because you know it, but it'll make you understand a little bit better how your spouse thinks about money.
I agree. I think also knowing how they grew up, that helps understand how they view money.
Yeah, when we first got married, we had different views of money.
Yep.
I'll never forget, and this isn't gonna make you mad. It's not gonna make you mad.
Oh, okay.
Hopefully, I haven't made this over. When we first got married, like I remember, I would get paid once a month. Pastors in our conference get paid once a month, and we set aside spending money, and I come back and the week is over. I was like, "Yo, where's the rest of the money?" And she spent it all.
In my defense, I still spend all the money. I buy everybody everything. You need socks? I buy them.
Clearly. But I'm not going to get in trouble. So next question.
Mm-hmm.
Tamara Hall says, or Tamara Hall, hopefully I said that correctly. Hey, everyone, and happy Sabbath. Should the contributions to the accounts be equal in paying the bills, or should that depend? Good question.
Oh, that's a good question. I don't think so. And this is why I feel like, so I guess let me change that. If you make around the same amount of money, both of you, then yes, right? You can split those bills down the middle if you choose to. You also have to evaluate like each other's other obligations, right? Because I feel like in this current time, right, there's a lot of people with student loan debt. So you have to decide like, okay, well, what's your goal with these student loans? Are you looking to pay those off, or, how would you like to handle that? So if it's a person who's like, okay, I'm fine with paying my student loans, just keep paying it and going through. And so y'all bills are about even and y'all make about the same, then splitting down the middle is great. If there's a difference in your pay, I'm not a fan of splitting it down the middle at all. Because first of all, I believe it's going to bring resentment, because what happens is, let's say that the man makes significantly more and the wife, she makes, let me just pick numbers, right? Let's say the wife makes around like $50,000 a year and the husband makes like $100,000, and they're living like the husband make $100,000, and you're looking for them to split those bills down the middle. The wife is not going to have money left over. And there's going to become a point where she's probably looking for money from the husband, and he's looking like, well, where's your money at? You know what I mean? Or why are you spending all the money? And so I think that you should come up with a percentage based off of your obligations. And so then I know people who one person pays all the bills. So like maybe and this is my advice, right? If it's 50,000, the wife makes 50, the husband make 100, I believe you should live off the 50. Because if the husband loses his job, that's the higher income. And even if it was vice versa, whoever has a higher income, that should be bonus money, right? And so you should live off that 50 so that you always know you'll have 50. So even if she lost her job, he makes 100, you got 50. But if he loses his job and she makes 50, you are missing 50,000 that you need to live off of. And so it could be a situation where you are using the wife's income to pay all the bills. And then maybe the husband's income is used to pay like extra towards debt, towards those other savings goals you have, like maybe traveling, early retirement, kids' college funds, investments, whatever. And so I just think that you have to figure out what works for you. But if you are one of those couples who like, okay, we're going to both put in money to the pot, I definitely believe that it should be allocated based on your income, unless you make close to the same amount of income. Because otherwise, it's going to be some resentment there.
So you actually kind of answered my next question. We've heard before that you should live off of one income, and you kind of alluded to that in your answer, that you should live off of one, but using the other income like to build savings or go towards debt. So you kind of answered that question.
Oh, good. Yeah. I definitely think you should. I know it's hard at first, right? You may have to create a plan to make that happen. Because even with me, like moving to New York, it costs a lot more to live here than it did in Charlotte, So I thought we was going to be able to do that. And I started looking at the numbers. I was like, that's not going to happen. And so like, that's my goal. So like saving more so that we can shift to that point, and making sure we're cutting out the stuff that really don't matter to us, but we pay for it because it's convenient and we like it. But you want to make sure that you try to get to a good place where you're not spending all of your income. And I will say, like, 50% is the goal, y'all. So all of your bills should equal out to about 50% of your income, your net income. And I know it can be rough initially, but the reason why I come up with that number is when I got laid off before, and I was in college, but I got laid off and my unemployment check was 50% of what I used to make. And so I thank goodness at that time, I was living at home. So I always tell people I was hood rich. Like I had money in college. So it didn't affect me. But if I was, living in my own house, paying real bills, there would have been a problem if my expenses were more than that. So you want to aim to a place where you get those expenses about at 50% of your income.
And with the extra, I guess, with the other salary, just being clear, that is where you would come in, like, with your wants.
Mm-hmm.
That's outside of the four walls in which you talked about before.
Right. Those would be your wants. Of course, we want to talk about tithe and offering.
Of course. And that's not a want, though. That's in that 50%.
Yeah, I actually put mine in my 50, actually. But, some people, I want to give them that extra room. So tithe and offering, any investments you want to do, travel, like all your wants, all your fun stuff can go in there. But yeah, Netflix can go in there too. So.
Michael Haywood says, how would you figure out the amount of the life insurance policies for each spouse? Is it based on assets, job, salary, the like? Okay,
so I used to be life insurance licensed, and so I'm going to go with that number because that is basically the number that I live by. So 10 times your salary is your life insurance number. So if we stick with my homegirl who's making $50,000, 10 times her salary should be somewhere around $500,000. Accountants are not as great as math as y'all think, so I just want to warn y'all. But we use calculators and Excel. But about $500,000 for one spouse, and then whatever the other spouse makes. So we're going with our guy who makes $100,000, $1 million policy for him. And I would also mention that if you have, you want to think about what is it going to cost for your kids? You know what I mean? What is it going to cost to take care of them? So when I did my first life insurance policy, I was looking at, okay, I want my son to still be able to go to college if he wanted to. And then I still want him to have this asset of the house. And so that was something big for me. So I made sure that policy could cover that if need be. Also, if you have minor kids, I should mention, you want to go ahead and set up a will and designate guardians. And you also may want to set up a trust and how that money is dispersed for those kids. And so my life insurance policy is set up where it goes into a trust, and there is somebody who manages that trust, because there's no way, if heaven forbid I pass away tomorrow, I would want my child to get, $500,000. You wouldn't want them. My kid's 19. He don't need $500,000 right now.
So when we talk about assets, I know that, you have liquid assets and you have current assets. What are those differences? Are they the same, or are we looking at the whole thing? Which one is better? Should I go more with liquid or should I go more with current? If I know people talk more about liquid and they said you want to have a whole lot more liquid because, you can do a lot more with it in terms of playing with it. But I mean, what is your take on that?
Okay, so current assets includes actual liquid assets. So current assets are really just anything that you can turn into cash quickly within a year, right? But I'm going to say you want liquid assets. And when I talk about liquid assets, I'm strictly talking about like an emergency fund. you need cash on hand. And so just to tell a quick story, so this week on Instagram, a marketing influencer complained because her high yield savings account went from being 1% to 0.08%. And even though, yes, it's dropping, first of all, let me make a note that, or say this, interest rates are going to drop. The Fed has set the rate at 0%. The bank is not going to keep paying you a lot of interest when the Fed has it at 0%, because that means that they're making less money, right? And so she was complaining. And truthfully, if she had like $10,000, I think that difference was only $6 a month that she would, and don't quote me on this number, but quick math, about $6 a month that she would be losing out of in her emergency fund. She decided to put the funds into Forex. Nothing is wrong with Forex. Forex is the foreign exchange market. Nothing's wrong with it. But my whole point was you need liquid assets. So you need to keep that money there. She didn't feel like she needed to. But the reason why she really needed liquid assets is, first of all, she's a landlord. And in the last year, she spent like a good amount of money, like thousands and thousands of dollars repairing a property. And she didn't have the cash, so she had to use debt. And so you can't sit there and say that I had to use debt to repair this and then decide that you don't need cash. Like, that's what an emergency fund is for. So it's important to have some liquid assets. So I think personally, if you're just starting out and maybe you have a stable job and you are looking to start building an emergency fund, you need at least 1 month of your total expenses, and not the expenses you made up in your head, like the expenses that you truly wrote out. You need at least that first, but you truthfully need like 6 months of your expenses for an emergency fund. And then that is just if you have a job where it's easy for you to pick up another job. Maybe you have a spouse who is working. If you're in a situation where you have a really high income, you're in a specialized field, maybe it's one of you who's working, then you may want to look to have like 9 to 12 months of an emergency fund, because when you're in those higher paying fields, those jobs are not just out there. So it's going to take you longer to find a job. You may have to move. And especially if you're like in a specialized field, like I like to use HR as my example, or like research. Those jobs, people stay in those jobs for a long time. So it's kind of harder to find like an open position. You want to make sure that you have that time to really look for a position and the position you want, right? Because truthfully, if you go into you can go into another job temporarily, right? You could. But sometimes when we do this, we don't do what we're supposed to do because we're used to getting paid more, we're bored or whatever. So you want to make sure you have enough money to be able to live comfortably for a while until you find a new position, or enough money where if, not right now because we're in a recession, but if they're getting on your nerves, you can leave and then, find another job. So you want options. So that's why I say, so savings, which is basically liquid assets, gives you options and opportunities. You can't take them if you don't have the money.
Nicole Marsh. I don't want to mispronounce her first name. We'll call Golf. Nicole Golf Marsh. Excuse me if I said it wrong.
I don't want to, but you did it anyway.
I want to know, what's the best way to start saving?
The best way to start saving is, I always say, set it up to be automatic. So if you get direct deposit, I feel like most people get direct deposit. If you don't, I'll tell you how to do it if you don't. But if you get direct deposit, most of the time you can set up your direct deposit to go to more than one bank. So I would set up for a certain amount to go to another bank. Typically, I say 10%. But if you cannot afford 10%, you can always start small. And I think that's why people don't start, because they are like, oh, I don't have the money, so I'm not going to do it. But you could start with 1%. You could start with $5. You could start with $25. I started saving with $25. And I had that money at a bank that's not my bank. So I don't advise you using the bank where your checking is set up. because you can easily, you know, especially with phones now, we can easily be like, oh, sale, click, transfer that money and use it. You want it somewhere where you have to kind of work to get to it or have to wait to get to it, but you want to put it at a bank. And when I started saving $25 a pay period, and that money added up. And then as you start making more money, then you just start adding more to what you're actually saving. So all of your like increases at work, if you get a raise, you can make that just automatically go to your savings. If you get a bonus, if you get a tax refund, you can take a portion of that and move it to your savings. It doesn't have to be the whole amount because I really believe in a balance. But you could take a little bit of that if you want to do past, present, future, where, you know, okay, we'll put a little bit towards debt. That's past. Present, I'm going to use that. And then future is going to go to savings. You can use that aspect, or you could just say, I'm going to keep 10% and just save the rest. But you can do it that way. But I would say set up a direct deposit first. That just makes it easy. If you don't receive a direct deposit, I would say set up an audit. You know when you get paid, but you're gonna have to be disciplined on this. Set up an automatic transfer. I wouldn't do it on payday because if you have to go to the bank and deposit check and all that stuff or use your phone, you don't want to do it that day. But maybe if you get paid on a Friday and then on Monday, set up where that transfer happens on like that particular date of the month. So you know when it will happen, and make sure you have the money there so it'll automatically transfer it to your savings. I believe in making everything automatic because when you start to think about it, it becomes an issue. Your wants come into play. And I could speak for that myself because I told you all I'm a spender. I don't let money hit my account. That's just what I just don't. I don't let it hit my account because I know me. Then I'm like, well, maybe I'm going to transfer a little less and do this with this money. And so I make sure stuff is already set up to go to where it needs to go. So you can do that. And then there's also automatic savings apps out there. So there's like Digit, and there is Qapital. Those are both two automatic savings apps. Now, they both have monthly fees, which people don't like. I think they're both start out at $2.99 a month. But if you're not a saver, that Digit app will help you. You know what I mean? Like, that's a small fee to pay to be able to build that savings. And it automatically, what it does is it kind of tracks how you spend your money. So if you do set up your accounts like I do, where it's bill account and spending account, I have it set up on my spending account because that bill money needs to go to the bills. And you just have it sit there and it starts to see how you're spending your money. And it's like, oh, well, she only spends this much. She normally has this much comes out of her account, and it'll pull money out and it'll put it in the savings for you. And I think that's great. It's still FDIC insured, just like your bank. And if you need the money, you're easily able to just transfer that money back to your account. I think it takes about 2 days. And that's why I like it because, of course, you don't need easy access to money that you really are supposed to be saving for something else. So.
I had a question that I changed my mind.
No, never mind.
You got gun shy.
If you realize you have debts piling up, right, what is the best way to get rid of your debts? Just starting off.
Yeah. Truthfully, I think that even though this is not mathematically the best way, right, interest-wise, I think the snowball method is the best method. So if you never heard of the snowball method, you're starting with the smallest debt. So let's say you have 3 credit cards, $300, $1,000, $5,000. You're going to start paying off that first credit card for $300 with a $300 balance first. And you're going to pay the minimums on the other 2 cards. And any extra money you got, you're going to throw it to that $300 card until you pay it off. And then once you pay that card off, you're going to take all that money that you was putting towards that $300 card and you're going to start putting it towards that $1,000 card and continue paying that card while you're paying the minimum balance on the $5,000 card. And you're going to continue paying it off and then rolling it down. So I think that's the best way to do it. It will cost you more interest possibly, right? Depending on what the interest is on the different cards. But small wins are motivation. And people don't realize how emotional money is, right? Money is really a tool. It can't make you do a thing in life, but people's relationship with money affects how they spend it. And so it's important when you're getting those small wins, it keeps you going. Because if you started with that $5,000 card and you were just paying maybe, let's say, a little bit over the minimum and it's taking so long, you might give up. But I say start with the smallest card first. Make sure you get some side hustles or use the money that you're saving from sales. Like, people don't think about that either. Like, if you found something for, I'm gonna use shoes because I love shoes. Let's say you found a shoe for $100, right? It's $100 shoe, but it's on sale for $50. Take that other $50 that you saved and put it towards your debt. You know, so people don't think about that. You could do that with your savings also, just so that you can get to the point where you're seeing the end of the rainbow, you know. Well, maybe it's not the end of the rainbow, but seeing the end. But I would say just starting with the snowball method first. That's the best way to start off. But there are other methods, but there's an avalanche, which is based on interest rate, highest interest rate to lowest. But the snowball is the one that'll get you going.
Okay, wow. Yeah, and nobody really taught me that, but I'm really appreciative of doing that. And Trish and I actually started doing that. And one of the things is me looking at your website and your information, and we start doing that. So we appreciate that. But I have a question. The question is, how do you teach kids or young adults to save and invest?
Okay, so teaching kids to save is, that's a little different. So it depends on the kid. I think, so you have to work with the kids where they are, right? So understand what your kid likes first. Because a lot of times people just want to start with money, but sometimes it's not money. Maybe you're teaching them to save through the use of actual items. So like candy, right? And so what you start to do is you start to show them, okay, let's save something for today and put something for tomorrow, right? So with me, I just use money because that's who I am. But I realized I probably should use a different method with my kid. But what I did was I gave him different like containers. And so when he got money, he had some money that he could spend. And then he had some money that he could save. And then he also had a little bit of money that I was like, this is for whatever's the big thing. So at the time, he didn't have a big thing. But eventually, you know, they come up with something in the store, right? They'll go to the store. Oh, I want this. Is this your big thing or is something else your big thing? But what I started doing is every time he got money, I made him split it up between, okay, we're going to spend a little bit now. We're going to save a little bit. And he could see what we were saving. And then we're going to start, we'll have that big thing. So that's how you kind of start off with little kids, right? When it comes to older kids with the, well, I shouldn't even say older kids with investing, because I know of this little kid who's like 6 years old who's investing. So you can start investing for your kid yourself. I have a friend in the personal finance space. His son is 2. He has a portfolio. And he is just planning to continually show him what he's doing. A lot of times we have to get our kids involved. And I know, especially us, like, especially in the African-American community, like there's that whole thought process of they don't need to know what's going on with our finances and things like that. But the more they understand, the better they're going to deal with it, right? And so what you can do is start getting them involved with investing. So if you're learning to invest yourself, you can have them sitting right next to you to learn to invest with you, or show them exactly what you're doing, right? For my son, I was trying to show him, he wasn't interested, but now he's interested. So I actually bought him a course. Some people are not going to be willing to do that. Let me buy you a course. I found somebody who was more his style, you know, his personality. Here you go. You can learn how to invest money on your own. You should also, there's lots of books out there. The Turtle Trader is a really good book on investing. But, you know, start showing them what's going on and how it's breaking out if you know yourself, right? But I would say sit with them. That's the best way to do it. If you don't show them yourself, you can put them on to someone else. But if you start showing them how things work, have them watching CNBC, explaining, like we know Apple's doing that 4-for-1 stock split. Explain that stock split to them so they can understand it. And even if you don't fully understand it, one thing I always say, if you have a job with a retirement plan, they have licensed people who can help you with explaining how to invest. Get your kid, if your kid's older, get your kid on the phone with you. Like, put your phone on speaker and ask questions and start to learn. Because I think sometimes that we think because we don't know how that we can't teach them, but we can learn together, and that'll be the best way to do it for your kid. And they'll probably enjoy it because they're like, Dad, okay, we're learning together. So like, I don't know Forex. My kids started learning Forex this year. So I was like, all right, I've been wanting to do Forex. So let's sit down and, figure out how to do Forex together. He didn't really want me involved, but I was trying to show him that we could do it together instead of, it's being a thing where, you have to learn it on your own.
Thank you so much for that. That's definitely one of the things that we're looking at. Now in this time, I noticed that with these 3 girls that we have, all 3 of them have different spending habits. One is a saver, one is a spender, and the other one is in the middle. So it's kind of like, okay, well, how do we kind of bridge the gap between the two? So I kind of try to show them, hey, I'm gonna give you this, and when I give you this, I want to see how long you can hold this, and then if you can hold it, then I'll do it. So that's the kind of things that I kind of try to do for them, to give them something to kind of look forward to. But again, that's not for everybody.
That is true. That's true. I think that's actually a good idea because, like I said, 2 people could come from the same household and have different spending habits. And so you have to kind of figure out what's the way to work for everyone. Like I told you, I'm a spender, but I trick myself into saving. My savings moves first. I don't see it. And so that's my way, right? But for somebody else, they may have to handle it a different way to be able to save.
So we live in what I would call kind of like a gig economy. Let's say, as a pastor, I have a certain set of skills that I will find you and will kill you. No,
I was so confused at first.
As a pastor, I have a certain set of skills. But how, in a gig economy, how can you find other ways to make money if you're trying to just get some extra money on the side?
So you have a certain set of skills, but you want to make some more money, is what you're saying?
Yeah.
Well,
what skills can I use?
Tell me what skills you have.
Legally. I also have a skill for public speaking. I could probably do motivational speaking if I wanted to do that. But just different things like that. Well, right now, actually, I launched a website, and I'll do my own plug here.
Shameless.
Diversity and inclusion, like consultant.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I like that.
What about something like Uber, though?
Why do you make that face?
I'm just saying with Corona out here, I ain't Ubering nobody. Call from your own car.
Or what is that shopping one where you go and you do the shopping for people? You know what I'm talking about?
Like mystery shopping or personal shopping?
Like you go in the store and do grocery shopping for people.
Oh, like Instacart. Okay.
Instacart.
Yeah.
Like those are like side hustles you were talking about earlier.
Yeah. So, well, I'll tell you up here, Instacart is winning. But I think gig economy is fine. I just think it depends on what type of person you are. Like, as far as like, you have to be on it. From what I've realized, you have to make sure that you jump on it quickly. I don't think anything is wrong with it. I think that what you'll have to do is make sure that you really put your customer first when you're going to get stuff. And I think you should really make sure you know the store. And this is just for me watching the Instacart shoppers. And then actually my co-host on Single Moms on the Money, she used to do, well, she still does sometimes, but she moved to Alaska. But anyway, she does Instacart. And she she does certain stores. She knows where things are and she knows how to pick food well, right? Because I think a lot of that has to do with whether or not you get good reviews, you get good tips. You want to make sure that you're going to benefit from doing this well. So I'm a big fan of the gig economy, especially if you're trying to fill in or you lost your job or had a reduction in income recently. Like that's a way to either fill in the blanks, right? Or either that's a way to kind of build up your savings account or put extra towards debt. Now, as far as public speaking, I should mention that I was telling Phil, I don't know if Phil told you, you did really great with that flyer. I was like, what? Does he do graphic design on the side? It's really nice. So
I paid someone to do that for me. So Phil should clarify that I paid someone with a skill.
I could have did it for you. Could have paid me.
Did you say no? Wait a minute. Okay, so I guess not graphic design, but if you do have a skill such as like motivational speaking or you want to do more with speaking, I would start with your inner network first, because the speaking circuit is just a little bit different to get into. I would start with your network first and see how you can get more speaking gigs. I think that I would come up with, if I were you, right, I would come up with, the things I want to talk about, like my different topics, and then start working with your network. I will also probably look into like seeing if you could connect with people who would get you like out there. So maybe you're speaking at schools, maybe you're speaking at like corporate, things like that. I'm trying to think of, you could also check with different nonprofits and see if you could possibly speak there. Now, initially, I'm not going to say you're not going to get paid. It just depends on people's budgets. But I feel like once you speak a few times, you should be getting a check. And speaking checks are comma checks, just to let you know. So
it's good to know.
Commas. We want commas. So you definitely want to make sure that you get out to do that. And I just think like if you have any transferable skills, like if you were into graphic design, then like I would try to get on places like you can start with Fiverr, but you could also check with people who are having events and start, advertising, like showing stuff that you have designed so people know that you actually design. Because that's part of the thing, like you create something or you start something, but you don't tell people. So people don't know, and they're not looking for you. Nobody is looking to see what you do. So start getting out there and getting people to buy your stuff. Upwork is another good one too, especially if you're trying to do stuff, or you can target a certain type of audience, right? So like, since I'm on YouTube, like YouTube banners for people, like you could do something like that. And yeah, it might seem like, oh, I'm doing somebody's YouTube banner, but that banner, if you're doing well on doing people's like YouTube and social media banners, then people are going to start knowing who you are. And then they're going to be asking you to do the same thing.
Someone in the group chat gave me a great idea. I could do voiceovers. Actually, someone told me that in college. I really could probably do that. I probably need to put my voice out there.
That's why you to me.
You should. Actually, somebody I know just became a voiceover artist, and that is something you can do. Like, there's a site called Voice 123, and I can't remember the other one. If you ask me after, I'll give it to you.
Get paid.
Yeah, like you can do voices, and even on Fiverr, like. Fiverr, I noticed that they have gigs for doing the voices for podcasts. And you're a podcaster, so they need a podcast intro or outro, and they need people to do that stuff. So
that's cool.
Yeah. Lydia John asked about tax returns. Should tax returns be used to pay off debt, save it, or both?
Depends on your goals. So I normally tell people they don't know. I like my little 3, my past, present, future method. So past, pay off debt, present, spend a little, future, save a little. But it just depends on where you want to be. Like, what's your main goal? Because one of them is your main goal. Now, if we're talking about COVID right now, then I would say just put it towards your savings. If you don't have 6 months worth of savings, then I would say go ahead and put it towards your savings so that you will have money to the side just in case something unexpectedly happens.
Good.
Thank you.
So you touched a little bit on student loans, and you were talking about how you were able to kind of wean yours down. Should we go into deferment when it comes to student loan, or should we try to pay the minimum and try to pay it off? You know, people always say, man, I'm going to take a class again and just keep deferring this thing for like 20 plus years. How does that work? You know, or should I know well, 10 years from now, that interest done doubled. You know what I mean? So it's like, yeah.
So I'll tell you a quick story. So last year I took a class. I had to take a class for something. And I did not tell my student loan company because I did not want my student loans to be deferred. And so all of a sudden I was like, wait a minute, why do I have extra money? And I'm like, why do I have extra money? And this is how you know you have extra money, because you have a bill account. So you're like, wait a minute, there's money in this account. Why I have extra money? So I started going through and I realized they didn't pull my student loans, because if you don't know, you get less interest charged if you let them automatically pull. I know some people don't like that, but that's what the bill account is for. The money's there. Let them pull it. Get that extra interest discount. And so I called them like, why didn't you pull my student loan? And they said, the school reported that you were in school. And I was like, what? I didn't even tell them I paid cash. And they were like, no, they told me you were in school. I was like, oh, but I just went ahead and made the payment towards the principal. But so here's the thing about student loans: compound interest. And if you see my last YouTube video, just shameless plug there, I talked about simple interest versus compound interest. Student loan interest compounds daily. So if you ever looked at your student loans, depending on how much you owe, there's a significant amount of interest that hits your loan each and every month. And if you are making only the minimum payment, your loan may be just increasing and not really decreasing if you ever really sat down and pay attention to your student loan balance. And that's what really kind of made me want to pay down my student loans, because I was like, wait a minute, I could have swore I only took out that my balance was this, and then I'm looking, my balance was higher. And it was because I was only making the minimum payment. And so they were like, all right. And they were just running that interest. So I'm not a fan of, say, just deferring your student loans, just taking classes. Like, if you want to go back to school, then cool. It makes complete sense, right? But at some point, it's going to be due. And when you defer your student loans, you're not getting credit for making those payments. So you know how they said that, I'm trying to not quote this wrong, but I think you make payments for 25 years, and then it stops. Well, guess what? When it's deferred, there's no payments. You're not getting credit for that. So you're just extending it out even longer. So it's really based off of what your overall goals are, right? And how much you actually owe. But what I think it makes sense to start trying to pay down your student loans. Now, if you're in a situation where you get forgiveness, then I'm not gonna say don't worry about it, but make sure you have it set up properly. Make sure you follow all of the rules, because if you don't do everything you're supposed to do, they will deny your forgiveness. Make sure you follow all the rules so that you can get your forgiveness. And side note on that, even though public loans right now are deferred, those $0 payments do count toward your forgiveness. I keep seeing that question put out there, so I want to let y'all know that it does count towards forgiveness. But you also have to consider the fact that, like, how much is that student loan affecting your numbers? Like, because there's so many ways you could pay off your student loans. There's like 7 different repayment methods, and it might be more than that, but I know there's at least 7 that you can repay your student loans. So I don't know. It just depends on your life. I wouldn't say put your student loans before consumer debt. So before credit cards, personal loans, car loans, all that type of stuff, do not put your student loans before that stuff, because your student loans most likely has a lower interest rate than those. But I do say, if you have the money, if that's your goal, unless you want to keep paying, Sally Mae, Navient, Great Lakes, and all them great people every month, I don't, then pay off your loans. It's worth it. And I would say, for the people who are all for the deduction, let's talk about the tax deduction real quick, right? So if you make under a certain amount, so I think the number is 70,000 if you're single, I think it's 140,000 if you're married filing jointly, then you're able to deduct $2,500 of your student loans, right? But you had to pay in $2,500 in interest for the year. It's not a dollar for dollar deduction. And so to get the $2,500, you got to pay more than $2,500 because it's based off your tax rate. So a lot of people are like, well, I get a tax deduction and blah, 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 blah. But sometimes you got to look at, is that tax deduction equivalent to how much interest you are earning on this loan every single year? Because sometimes it doesn't make sense. And then for some people, they're not even getting a tax deduction because they make too much and they don't even realize it. They just think they're getting it because they give it to their tax preparer or they put it in. You can always put it in, but once they do the math, it's not, you may not get it, so it's important to make sure that that tax deduction is really benefiting you. Sometimes it's just not worth it unless you just can't afford it. Oh, I see the tears. Believe me, I hate my student loan too, but it gotta go. I'm on a 2-year span.
Now, if my wife and I are both HBCU alums, and we know Biden made this promise. Now, I don't know if that's gonna, if he has to get elected. 2, he still could be lying. But how much faith, and you might say, look, I have no idea. How much faith should we put in this promise that HBCU student loans will be forgiven?
I don't have faith.
Look at her face. There was no faith.
I don't have faith. And truthfully, this all goes back to the history of America. I do not see the Republican House or the Senate allowing for that to happen. I see it fighting to the death. I think the only way it's going to happen is if we have the House and the Senate as a Democrats. I don't see it. And it still might not happen because America has a history, and I hate to say it like this, America has a history, they just do not want to benefit African Americans, and I just do not see it happening. If they do it, I hope I'm wrong. I really do, but I don't see it. Yeah, that's correct. Student loans will hurt you. It's 1% of your overall. I might be wrong, so y'all can check me. I don't care to be fact checked. It's 1% of your overall balance that affects your the amount that you have available to get a student loan when it comes to purchasing a home. So it can hurt you. Okay. Yeah, because I actually saw in a group yesterday, somebody was upset. I think they said the husband and wife make $150,000. They have $150,000 in student loans. They only got approved for $150,000 for a house, and where they live, that's not possible. So it definitely can hurt you.
Wow. Another question. Speaking, it's kind of shifting the conversation. Talk about what we're going through right now with COVID-19. If your job security is on the line, maybe your job is looking to lay people off or looking at furloughing you, what should you begin to do with your checks as they come in each month now?
Okay, so the first thing I would say is prioritize all your expenses first, because you're gonna have to cut something. That's the reality. So I would prioritize your expenses. I'm all about the 4 walls first. Trying to get those minimum payments on the debt first, and then anything that's extra, I would start personally cutting. I would start cutting that stuff out immediately. I would start stockpiling cash any way I can. Because typically with the rumors, they always go through. I rarely hear where it doesn't happen with rumors. Hopefully it'll pass you, but you definitely want to start stockpiling cash because you need money to be able to cover for your expenses. And they may offer you well, if you are being laid off, maybe they'll offer you a severance, right? Hopefully. But even with that, do not count on your severance to be like the end all be all, like I'm gonna be straight because I have a severance. Because sometimes the companies, you know, depending on whatever their situation is, they may not offer you what you think you're gonna get for a severance. And you need to be, especially in this situation where we're in a big place of the unknown, right? You know, I thought COVID was gonna be gone in a month. Then they said COVID was going to be like gone when it got hot, and it's still hot, and COVID's still here. So we don't know when it's going. And so what I would say is you want to make sure you have enough time, enough runway as possible. So if you have a severance, you don't want to be using all of your severance, like counting on it. So you want to start stockpiling that cash. I also would say I would start looking into ways to bring in other income out, like in a quickness. If you're good at cooking, if you're good at making things, if you're, you know, use all those skills you have to start bringing in cash, because having one source of income, just period. Like I want to say since 2000, because that is my like, you know, first experience of a recession. You want to have another stream of income coming in. So you want to try to bring in that stream of income. So those were the things that I would initially start with, like cutting out things. Oh, and another thing I would say is contact your creditors, because we don't do this. And this is a reason why the majority of people who were African-American lost their homes during the Great Recession, which was the 2008 recession, is because we don't contact our creditors. So now I'm not guaranteeing you they have a program, but a lot of them do have stuff like they don't want to lose you as a customer. First of all, banks are not in the business of owning property. They want interest. They want to earn from your money, and so they don't want to hold on to your home. So they may have a program available. Credit card companies, even with COVID, like when they started out, they were like, "Hey, let us know if you can't make your payment." I don't even have a balance on my cards, and I was getting notices. Let us know if you have a, you know, decrease in income, you need help with your payment. So contact people, let them know. Even like my car insurance company, they are delaying payments, deferring payments for people who can't pay for their car insurance. So you should definitely contact them also and see what you can work out in order to make it a little bit easier for you. I didn't see that what you put up. That was my husband. Oh yeah, he does give us a heads up. So I guess I should also mention, with this being a recession, y'all, we have recessions pretty frequently. And so I want us to get to the point where like managing our money is a norm, right? We shouldn't wait till it's a recession to say, oh, I got to get my money in order. Because like right now we're in a recession. We had a recession back in 2008. This is the longest time frame that we didn't have a recession. That's why, I don't know if y'all remember, we had rumors like 2 and 3 years ago, like a recession's coming. That's why. Because before 2008, there was one in 2001. That was the .com and 9/11 recession, right? And then before that, it was like 91. And there was 2 in the 80s. There was one in the 70s. There was one in the 60s. Like, it's consistent. We consistently have recessions. So we need to get in the mind frame of constantly like managing our money properly so that when recessions happen, we're not in the scramble. You know, we need to be in a place of, we need to be better stewards of our money, basically. So, or God's money, I should say.
A newlywed asked the question.
Emmanuel.
What
are great ways for passive income? So passive income, first let me say passive income is not passive in the beginning, because I always see this on YouTube. Like people are always mad, like, that's not passive income. You got to put in work. Passive is not passive in the beginning. It's passive after you set it up. So great ways for passive income are like investments. And so if you're into investments, you can get dividends and interest from that. Real estate is a way to get passive income. If you have a skill and you can create something, it's not passive per se, right? Because you're putting it up front, but you're creating something. If you can put it out there on like some type of site to sell, like digital downloads, a book, or things like that, that's a great way to earn passive income. What else? I'm trying to lean toward the ones that are not like so big, because I know I mentioned real estate. Even though I will say this, you can earn passive income in your own house. It's called house hacking. So I know they're newlyweds. I don't know where they live, but you know, sometimes when we think about buying houses, like we only think about like, oh, let me get a house just for me, right? So if you are having a roommate, that's house hacking, right? Because you have a roommate, that roommate is helping you offset your rent. Other ways I want people to think about it, like, so if you haven't bought yet, if you buy a multifamily, like you could rent one side and they could possibly pay, you know, all of your mortgage or even close to it. So you want to think of ways in which you can bring in money, where you might put in some work up front, but then later on, you know, you're not putting in as much work. But I definitely would say investments are a great way for passive income. Creating products or like writing a book or things like that, in which you put in the work one time and then you continually sell it. And courses is one too. You could use a lot of these course platforms like Coursera, like Udemy. There's another one that for some reason just escaped my mind, but where you create a course and you sell it. And so people can buy those. And if you want to do it on your own site, that's even better because then there's less fees.
Got it. Thank you so much. I guess one question I'd ask, how and what ways, I mean, right now, as people are dealing with a lot of uncertainty, a lot of concerns, what ways can faith be integrated into our finances as we prepare for this uncertain, unknown time?
Ooh, okay. Faith being integrated into our finances. I think you really have to, well, first of all, and I'm going to go here only because I used to be on Treasury, pay your tithe and your offering. Because truthfully, when you pay it willfully, you'll be okay. Seriously, like you will get everything that is due to you. All bills will be paid. But I also would just say, like, you really have to stay connected with the Lord. You know, sometimes we'll pray for something and it's not happening fast enough, and then we'll start to go our own way before he can really make it happen for us. And I feel like for me, at least, the Lord, he'll make it happen for me. And then in my head, he's looking at me side eye, like, I told you I was going to take care of it. So I think that we really have to get into a relationship with the Lord, and really spend time with him daily. And then that will help us understand how we are supposed to be stewards over our money. Right? Because the Bible really gives you everything you need in life. Like, it tells you how to handle everything, and money is not an exception. It talks about saving. It talks about investing. It talks about giving. It talks about debt. And so it even talks, of course, about tithe and offering, returning. And we know that everything on earth is the Lord's, right? And so it all belongs to him. And so if we're spending our time like really with God, I think that helps increase your faith over time. And then you'll realize that, okay, I need to be better with handling my finances, because this is the way God said things should be. And a lot of us, you know, we feel like we have a right to do what we want with our money because it's our money, but it's really not our money.
Mm-hmm. And that's a very true statement. I hear a lot from people. You know, why is the pastor, why is the church, why are people trying to tell me what to do with my money? And there's almost this rejection of the concept that it's not just 10% is God's money, it's all God's money. And it's important that even times like these, right? I think about this story Ellen White talks about in Testimonies of the Church, where she goes down to Australia. Well, the church banished her to Australia because she was prophetic for them. And as she's in Australia, they're talking about building a university, and the land which the Lord instructs them to buy the university, everyone says this is bad land. Like nothing can grow here. Nothing's going to work here. And they end up buying the land and using it because God had ordained it. And it's amazing to see how God blessed them. And I think for so many of us in these times, with this uncertainty, with this concern, we're thinking, there's no way we should do this, or no way we can do this, no way. And we allow fear and anxiety to dictate how we trust God in this. But I think you're right. As we trust God, God's going to open ways and make doors. And it's no doubt there are some people who definitely will be laid off. But I think it's in the laying off that you're going to see how God's going to come through even in a greater way as you trust him in the journey.
Oh, yeah.
So, Elena, I want to thank you. And I'm so glad that I'm asking it right for the masses.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
But we want to thank you for your time. As you can see, the people are interactive. I think there's something we have to do again.
Definitely.
We want to applaud our marriage ministry leaders. The Janices, Phil and Trish, they did a tremendous job planning this. And here at Northeast, we're prioritizing meeting the needs of families and connecting with families because we know the devil is attacking the home. So if you have, any interest, any topics you'd like to see marriage ministry or family life or women's ministry or men's ministry to discuss, please don't hesitate to send us a message on Facebook, reach out, or send it or go to the just find a way to connect and contact us. For those on YouTube, thanks for watching. For those on Facebook, we thank you for watching. I'll let the Janices close us out, and then we will conclude our services. But once again, thank you.
Definitely. Before we close out, Elena, just tell us what we could get you, your website and your space where people can contact you and further learn.
Okay, so my website is www.financialdemics, is spelled just like it sounds, .com. You can also find me on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and Pinterest under Financial Demics. And if you want to email me, feel free to email me at hello@financialdemics.com.
Great. Once again, on behalf of Family Marriage Ministry, Trish and I thank you. You don't know, Elena's like my little sister. And I'm so proud of her, how she's grown up, and especially her son and Sincere and Ryan. So I'm so proud of y'all and the great work you're doing and continue to do. But literally, and Elena quit corporate America to pursue this career. And she was doing well. So that's how much she had in God. She left that to continue this. So this is something she's passionate about. Please reach out to her and if you need more information. So we'll close out in prayer. And we thank Pastor and his wife for hosting and helping us out in this and his push to continue to make sure we have programs for everyone. We thank you. So let's pray. Let's bow our heads as possible. If you're driving, don't close your eyes. Father God, we thank you for this opportunity. We thank you for Elena Anthony and her husband and her project she has. You have ordained her to do, to share and to help others finance, Lord. Lord, we know that finance could break marriages and it could also heal marriages, but the thing is to have a relationship with you. So we pray that you continue to bless each one of us as we take these nuggets, implant them into our, adopt them into our lifestyle. Wherefore, we'll be better stewards of your finance and best stewards of your time. Keep us, guide us, and protect us, especially in these situations. Lord, I'll be remiss not to pray for those who's going through a certain situation right now, Lord, and that they needed this, that you may answer them and remind them all the things you have done for them in the past, what you're about to do for them in the future. All they have to do is hold on and have faith in you. Forgive us our sin and shortcoming. Keep us reigning of this Sabbath. And bless our loved ones. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen, amen, amen. Thank you so much. We invite you, if you enjoyed this, to please share it on your personal Facebook account. There's a lot of information covered here that I think is beneficial for so many people. So please share it. And we want to boost whatever Elena Anthony's doing. And we want to thank her husband for coming and supporting in the comments.
Oh gosh.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.